Don't let the graphics of this game fool you. Even though it looks like Nintendo 64 quality, it came out on May 14th in 2024. This game did nothing short of surprise our team, and we're more than happy to bring it to the forefront of one of our latest reviews. This somewhat of a sleeper title was made by lovelyhellplace and published by Dread XP, and since its release, has developed somewhat of a cult following, but for very good reasons. No pun intended, either. I'm Nash from Off the Shelf Media, and today we're talking about Dread Delusion. Players are immediately dropped into the game in a grim state, something you need to get used to while playing. You start off as a prisoner, being offered freedom to hunt down a notorious outlaw. Now that on its own is an interesting enough plot point, but it goes much deeper. The world has largely been rendered uninhabitable due to an apocalyptic event in the past, some hundreds of years ago. Channeling a bit of a Zelda theme here, but be prepared for more of a Majora's Mask feel in terms of atmosphere. The resulting apocalypse means the vast majority of the game takes place in the Sky Realms, a cluster of floating islands hovering above the world outside the dangers of the surface, but not without its own problems. The atmosphere of the game is, well, dreadful, while also being vibrant with a diversity stretching more than just the environment and the different regions within them. The dialogue and quests are kind of horrific and tragic, but also you have a lot of mixture of comedic elements in the game. It really keeps you on your toes for what to expect, while also never seeming too outlandish. It aims at feeling unsettling, but nothing is too unfamiliar to be confusing. If you've played classic RPG titles, you're going to feel right at home with this game, and that's kind of why it does so well. It does an excellent job of committing to itself unapologetically. By that I mean, the stories show you about as much as possible visually on the screen and how you play, but the exposition you get from character dialogue and quests draws you in more rather than feel like it just explains what's missing in the game. A lot is left for you to interpret, but not too much for it to seem like a burden. It also doesn't just jam it down your throat to feel like you're reading a book and not actually playing a game. It also helps that the music is really awesome. The gameplay as a whole is simple, which isn't a bad thing. It should really be used as a baseline for making an RPG. The combat, the dialogue, the magic, and the stealth all sort of come together and have their practical uses, but these different classes that you can use as you progress your character by discovering more delusion to upgrade yourself, this is where skill points essentially come into play in the game, they all mix well with each other, and while none of them are crazy unique, they all have a perfect setting. Nothing feels useless. It's kind of annoying to play an RPG game, and there are a lot of features that just kind of seem pointless, or that most people sort of ignore because they're more of a hassle. Here, that's not really the case. It's probably best to go with a more diverse class build, but I think you can certainly find success in going with one class in particular. You may not get as far or do as much, but it's certainly playable in that aspect. That's what makes it a true RPG. Another big feature I like that is really reminiscent of older classic RPG titles is it makes you work to receive the benefit of fast traveling. Kind of like how in Morrowind, there are multiple types of fast traveling. You could use spells, which is also the case in Dread Delusion. You could also have the Mages Guild teleport you places. You could also use the Silt Striders to fast travel to major cities. Dread Delusion does something here with the different teleportation elements, not all being clustered into one easy group on the map that you just click. You actually have to discover them. You have to complete quests in some cases just to be able to unlock them. You have to walk around and get to them first, and honestly have a good knowledge of where they're going to drop you in the world, but you can't just pinpoint on any massive location that you discover. The map is also something you're not just given. Well, you are given the map, but it's blank. You have to fill it in with points of interest that you come across. They'll give you a notification when you do come across one, but you have to actually do the work to get there. As much as it'd be helpful to look something else up online, it's not really that helpful when you don't have the map actually drawn yet. This continues as sort of a reward for discovery. You do yourself a disservice by trying to look things up online with this game, at least for your first playthrough. A lot of things are hidden behind secret walls that are really just like two-dimensional paint that your character can easily walk through. There are certain potions you can take that will make these disguises easier to recognize, but you can also discover them on your own. It embraces that classic notion that you are adventuring. It gives you that feeling. And by looking things up online, you kind of strip that away. I'd also say it's kind of hard to look things up. When there were certain missions that I was stuck on and I did look them up online, I often didn't find a lot of really useful information. You can find some generic guides on Steam that can certainly make the game easier, but a lot of specifics really aren't that spelled out, even requiring you to do it yourself, which I genuinely appreciated. After I looked something up the first time, I sort of stopped. It was a lot more fun to discover it on my own, and it was never really that hard as long as I was persistent about discovering it. Now, a lot of these features that I've talked about aren't necessarily unique. It certainly takes a lot of mechanics or sort of game theory ideas from other games in a way that I think more of pays an homage than rips them off, because what the developers did, or developer, is pulled them together perfectly. None of them are broken. None of them feel outlandish or out of place for the game and the setting. They all work well in conjunction with each other. It takes good ideas from a few other titles, sprinkled in with some newer ones, and combines all of them 100% fluidly. It makes the game feel dynamic and rewarding, but also being familiar if you've played similar titles. This means that it does also follow the tradition of being a somewhat long title to play. I think I've had under 40 hours to beat the first playthrough, and you really kind of have to do 2 playthroughs to probably like platinum the game if that's what you're setting out to do to get all the achievements. But the second playthrough would probably take a lot less time, because I think the first one is just getting familiar with the map. Once I was familiar with the map, it became way easier to get around and do exactly what I wanted to do, to revisit areas that I knew I wasn't ready to explore yet. So it is kind of long. Take that as a negative if you want. I don't, in terms of an RPG, because none of it ever drags on. The game feels fun the entire time. The worst part about the game, and it's my biggest and probably only complaint, is that kind of early on I realized you can sort of just run away from the enemies. And I'm not saying use some sort of glitch or AI pathway logic bug to sort of block them off and run away. You can pretty much outrun the vast majority, if not every enemy type from the beginning. It might be harder when your stamina is lower, but it's certainly doable. It makes it a lot easier late game when you get spells that increase your speed, which kind of makes sense, because when you are late game, you've probably explored most stuff and you're just going back to collect things you've missed. But the fact that it didn't sort of force you to engage, that enemies didn't have more speed or like higher accuracy if you ran away, for instance, it kind of detracts a little bit from the combat and makes it feel unnecessary. And definitely, if you get in that loop of just running away from enemies from the jump, you're not going to be well equipped in the few instances where you really do have to actually engage in the combat, which is a rewarding system, because most enemies that you vanquish drop some kind of useful loot, whether it be like ammunition, lockpicks, or health potions, just generic base loot. That's all really useful stuff to accumulate, especially the lockpicks, which you can only carry a few of, and you burn through quite often. At least I found myself burning through them. It also doesn't really burn a hole through your wallet. This game's regular price is like $19.99 on Steam, so for $20, you can get around 40 hours of gameplay if you just play it once. That's a pretty good ratio. It's a pretty good dollar to hour ratio of playtime, where every $1 gets you 2 hours of entertainment. I can't really think of a better offer, to be honest, in the world of entertainment. Like I said earlier, though, if you do want to platinum the game, you're going to have to at least do 2 playthroughs. A lot of the choices are binary, and those achievements, I guess you could save strategically, but that would require you to look it up, which, again, kind of ruins the fun of the game. So you really do have to play through twice just to do everything. But then again, that's only if you're a completionist, and that's what you set out to do. I'm not sure there's a huge benefit to replaying it. Maybe in a couple years, when I haven't played it in a while, I'll go back and play, sort of rediscover the things I forgot, but with a even more familiar understanding of the controls and the environment, really understanding the environment without needing the map to get around everywhere. But As far as I go, one playthrough is enough, and 40 hours is kind of a long time. It'll take some players who are more familiar with older titles less time, but for me, I play a lot of RPGs, and I try to do most things. If I ever run across something, I try to finish it in a game like this, and so I really got my money's worth, and like I said, nothing was boring. It didn't drag on, so it was entirely time enjoyed. There was only one point where I felt like it was really sort of having my feet in the sand, and that was in that giant squid part. But that was entirely on me, because I did a bad job of puzzle solving and accidentally went ahead when I should have waited and searched an area more. So that's really more on me than it is the development of the game. In the end, I gave Dread Delusion a final score of 9 out of 10. If you like RPGs, you're going to love this one, especially if you grew up with games like Morrowind, or even if you've been interested in those types of classic titles, but are looking for something that's going to be a bit more stable on your PC. I never had a game crash or experienced really any major bug. It kind of makes sense because the game entered development in 2019 and was slowly released in sections over the years, with early access on Steam launching in 2022, and then finally the version we have now from 2024, with the last hotfix being in August of the same year. It's a great game. I highly recommend picking it up. If you want more from us, you can check out our website, offtheshelfmedia.com, or in the description below for my full review, where I really go in depth on the game. Be sure to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.